right. So we've finished with the mechanisms for antibody. Now the next thing that I wanted to chat with you about, and we're getting close to playing the little game, the primary and secondary exposure. Right? Remember the B cells, they developed what you might call it, memory cells, correct? So if we want to, let's try and make a timeline of the response. Okay, and this is going to be antibody levels. This is going to be time. Okay, this is going to be primary exposure. This is going to be secondary exposure. So primary exposure. First antibodies that go up are IgM. Remember I mentioned they are the first responders. And then after a while, IgG starts to increase. What's going to happen during the secondary exposure in terms of the antibody levels? They're going to get spiked. They're going to get higher, and they're going to get higher faster. So first, it's going to be IgG, and IgMs are going to increase as well. Does that make sense? So you see how immunological memory works here. Correct? Now, what is the exposure? How can we get exposed to the antigen? How can we get it? Yeah, can we get infected? Right? We can get infected. And that's nature's way to do it, right? So we can get infected. That's natural immunity. Is that natural? Breast milk? Yeah. Okay. Or breast milk. In case of breast milk, do you get exposed to the antigen? Like if you're a baby, what do you receive from your mother? No. Unless there's an infection, but generally no. Huh? You get only antibodies, right? You don't get the actual exposure. So that's why infection is the natural active immunity, and breast milk, the IgAs in the breast milk is natural passive. If there's a natural way, there should be an artificial. What's going to be the artificial? Huh? No, the immunity, artificial immunity. What's going to be the artificial one? Vaccine. So artificial. Is that active? Do we get exposed to the antigen? Oh yeah. Is there an artificial passive? If you get bitten by a venomous snake, what you can get? Anti-venom, which is antibodies. You know, so they will give you the immunity against venom. You weren't exposed in the first place. I mean, you were, but you kind of can die because of that. Okay? So antibodies, just immunoglobulin, for instance, intravenously, intramuscularly, okay? That's going to be artificial passive. You see the difference between passive and active? Natural, artificial, it's pretty obvious, but passive and active immunity, you're getting exposed to the antigen. In passive, you don't. Okay? Here comes the climax of that immunology chapter. The vaccines. Again. Well, isn't that fun? Bless you. We didn't talk about types of vaccines. You're going to tell me, how can you make a vaccine? Huh? We'll talk about it. You can, huh? How can you make a vaccine? Plants is, this idea is circulating and they try to, but it's not that straightforward. Well, expand on it. Like you have a plague. Huh? Say very little. But if you take plague, the infectious dose is like a couple of cells. Still, I mean, if you either, it's not enough for exposure to immunity. I know where you're going, but it's not about the amount, it's something else. Think about something else. Justin's proposal is inactive. So vaccine can be inactivated. So the pathogen is either dead bacterial cells, or inactive, like the virus. Why we don't call virus vaccine dead? Yeah, viruses are not living, they can't be dead, right? Okay, so inactive. Do you know any inactivated vaccines? Which one? In the nose or in the muscle? In the muscle. Got it. Something else? Huh? No, that's different one. That's what you have to think about. Another way to vaccinate. Which one? Oral or injectable? Injectable. Inactivated polio vaccine. Okay. We can think of others. Less common. Right? Does that make sense? Inactivated. Okay. Now, the idea of infecting a person. But it's not about the amount, it's about something else. What you can do with a pathogen? Make it weaker. So attenuated vaccine. So this is going to be measles, mumps, rubella. Something else? You already named it, just a different type. Huh? Well, MMR, measles, mumps, rubella. Which one? The nasal spray, flu mist. Turns out to be not really incredible. Oral polio. I think did anyone get oral polio? This. Oh, you shouldn't. You're Americans. It was, United States were using inactivated polio since Jonas Salk. I was vaccinated with oral polio. Okay. Well, yellow fever, for instance. Okay. Any other way to do it? You have to have an entire pathogen. Hypothetically. Or can you just take a part of it as an antigen? One protein of a virus. You can. It doesn't work for everything, but for hepatitis B it worked pretty well. Yellow fever virus, yes. So Hep B will be a subunit vaccine. You can imagine that subunit vaccines, one of the safest, because it's not only, it's one protein of hepatitis B, which is artificially, it's synthesized. Babies receive it like first, second day of their lives. Does that make sense? Any other way? Antigens. Most antigens that we use are proteins. Proteins are encoded in what molecule? DNA. Can you stick DNA into someone? Yeah. It's well, generally it's a DNA vaccine. We can call it DNA plasmid vaccine. Plasmids are, remember what plasmid is, right? The circular DNA from bacteria. You can manipulate it fairly easily. You can throw something into the plasmid, say proteins of, I don't know, real virus, okay, and start injecting people with the plasmid. There are no WHO approved plasmid vaccines. And as far as I remember, there are no approved plasmid vaccines in the US. There's a concern that they may cause transformation, which means may cause cancer. It was never proven, but yes. That's number 5, vector. Again, no approved, to my knowledge, vector vaccines. Well, retroviral vaccines. What Justin suggested is to take a retrovirus, okay? It's a type of the virus. It's not the virus from the 60s. And put some genes into it. Did you see the picture? What? Seeing me 2 days, 4 days in a row. Can understand her. Of course. That's retrovirus, right? Anyway, so retrovirus actually has quite a unique mechanism. It can insert its genome into the genome of the human cells. Okay, so if you somehow manipulate it to have the gene that produces certain antigen, this antigen can be produced all the time in your body, and your immune system will constantly produce antibodies to it without any infection or any disease. Does that make sense? The problem, again, is that if retrovirus inserts itself in the wrong place, it can cause malignancies. So it's still debating. But there is a vector vaccine that is approved. It's the combination of the vaccine strain of yellow fever and pathogenic strain of dengue. Okay? I think it is called dengue vax. So it's kind of a Trojan horse. Okay? It doesn't cause the disease. Okay, but it provides immunity against yellow fever and dengue. That makes sense. So there are actually many approaches for making vaccines. And here's the soapbox. Here's the play. I am going to be an obnoxious parent who doesn't want to vaccinate his child. Huh? Should he get what? No. And don't go for the child protection services, please. In real life, my kids are fully vaccinated. So, most of you go into the health profession, right? I know that some don't. Some go, but they're not going to interact with patients, which is absolutely commendable. But I still encourage you to participate in the task of convincing me to vaccinate my child. So I don't want to. Go ahead. Why? I have an insurance. I'm covered. I have an insurance. Huh?
Stripped of his medical license, and his article was thrown out of the Lancet.
Yes, I read that he was wrong. You had like a sample size of like 12 people.
Yes.
If you choose to
Okay.
vaccinate your child,
Wait a minute. Okay, we'll get to you. Keep the thought.
in real life we don't take turns. We're all just gonna come at you once.
In real life, I don't have for, I don't have 9 nurses screaming at me.
Hey, clearly you've never been to Hillcrest.
Huh?
Clearly you've never been to Hillcrest.
I've never been to Hillcrest, no. Okay, so first, Justin and Brooke are absolutely right. Andrew Wakefield was stripped of his medical license. It turned out he had a massive conflict of interest. His work was funded by the company's law firms that are specialized in suing pharmaceutical companies. And he actually moved from UK to the United States. He lives in Austin, Texas, and continues to peddle the idea that MMR vaccine causes autism. Huh?
Did you just? Oh, I think you said that he still does. I was like, wait, yeah.
He still peddles this idea. He
That he was.
Yeah, but he's still trying to.
look, the guy who committed such a huge lie. You know, such a small thing wouldn't be a big problem. You know, I committed today. I admitted this yesterday. I'm not admitting this today. Who cares? Okay, so the thing about Andrew Wakefield is absolutely right, and there's no body of evidence that suggests that vaccines cause autism. Okay, so now my argument is, look, but vaccines contain mercury. Which fish? Huh? Tuna. Yeah, tuna contains a shitload. You know what's the most convincing argument? All vaccines that are used in the United States do not contain mercury anymore. They took it away. The only reason they added thimerosal, the how should I call it? The preserving chemical, the mercury-containing chemical, was to, if you have like a batch of vaccine and you stick the syringe into the batch, get the dose, stick it in the child, and then take another syringe, stick it out, suck it out, stick it in the second child. So the batch will not get sour, okay, will not rotten. Let me put it this way, the dose of vaccine is much less mercury than the can of tuna. Oh yeah, there's plenty of weird shit. Okay, so the point is they now started to require all vaccines to be single dose, period. So there's not a batch. You get like a syringe, they stick it into you, and they throw the syringe away, and it comes pre-packaged from the factory. Does that make sense? Nothing to worry about. Okay, what was your argument? If you don't vaccinate.
I told you before that my friend doesn't vaccinate. Now, doctor's offices are requiring you to sign a AMA form saying that you're doing it against medical advice, and your insurance company will not pay for anything.
For anything like what?
For any of your child appointments or anything like that, they'll drop it. It's against medical advice that you did not vaccinate your children, so they will not pay for any of your doctor's appointments or anything like that.
So you're telling me that I still can come to your office, but my insurance company will not pay for anything.
You cannot pay for it out of pocket, which is more expensive for, say, any procedure you need. Like if your kid gets, like, God forbid, the flu,
Yeah.
you're not paying for all that out of pocket.
I didn't know. That's actually good news. That's great news. Huh?
Child can be denied to go to certain schools. I think that's a law in California.
In New York.
However, she gets around it because she goes to see a chiropractor. So her chiropractor covers her child care.
Okay.
But yeah, that is a thing that now you now have to pay for most things out of pocket.
Okay. New York and California recently passed. New York, city of New York, you cannot, your child cannot be admitted to public school for any reasons. Philosophical doesn't count. Okay.
Most children who, well, I've come to realize that most people who don't vaccinate their children are more inclined to homeschool anyways, so.
Well, go for it. I'd be happy. I don't want your kid around my kid. Absolutely not. Okay. I had another argument. But isn't natural ways better? Like sort of, natural infection, selection and all that, Isn't that better to get, it provides you with better immunity, the natural infection? Huh? Huh? Yeah. What if you don't survive? That's what I tell when people tell me about Natural selection telling me you're ready for a child not to be selected?
Natural selection will be okay, but it's not something.
So that's another argument. So if when you will come across those people, okay, absolutely. So here's the problem: you try to provide them with logical arguments. You try to provide them scientific data. They work with anecdotal evidence. You see what I'm saying? My friend's child got the vaccine, and 2 weeks later, he died in a car crash. Okay, God forbid. But the logic is the same. 2 weeks later, he or she developed autism.
But you don't just develop autism at the autism is not
Diagnosed,
it's a
yeah.
genetic thing.
Yeah.
You can't inject someone with autism.
Well, they claim that you can. So my advice, first of all, be patient. Second, use their weapon. Use anecdotal evidence. This is what works. I can tell now, a friend's child, well, not friends, my wife's colleague, okay? Her son died about age of 1 between 2 measles shots. He was about to be vaccinated and he contracted measles. From who? From someone who wasn't. And they have no idea who it was because measles is extremely contagious. Okay? So when you vaccinate, okay, you protect not only you, you protect other people. And I have no problem. If your child is not vaccinated, I don't want you to be around my child because vaccines are not 100% effective.
See, I wasn't vaccinated until I was an adult.
Well, good that you are now.
Yeah.
Seriously. Because that's...
Medical reasons. I mean, every time it happened, my sister ended up having to get life flighted. I spent like 2 months in the hospital.
That's
We
an...
just were medically exempt.
This is another thing. So there are some kids that cannot get vaccine. By getting vaccinated, you protect them. Okay? Kids, people, whatnot. Well, my last argument. Pharmaceutical companies earn shitload of money from vaccines. No.
No, because the vaccines are for everyone, so they can't control it. It's not like the EpiPen where they can own like certain stock in it and jack up the prices. The vaccines are there for everyone. It's regulated.
The thing is, vaccines cannot be extremely expensive because that's pretty much government-run program. I mean, if you want to get vaccinated against yellow fever, it's probably going to cost you $1 because it's not for everyone, okay? But the vaccines that are used for everybody, they have to be affordable, yes, okay? So that's an important thing. Don't get me wrong, I told AP class. They're not ending up unprofitable. They're still going to make money. But compared to, I don't know, Prozac, it's nothing. Okay? So vaccines are not the most profitable part of pharmaceutical business. Does that make sense? So be patient. Show them Jenny McCarthy body count website. I don't know if it's up and running. We can check. Ever heard about it?
Another thing my friend brought up was that they're like they can't get an exact time frame of when children should be vaccinated. There's one she saw like the insert for the flu vaccine that said after 6 months old they should be getting it, and then like go down to the bottom it says anyone under 2 years of age or younger should not be getting it.
Say,
Like for the vaccine,
mhm.
like she says that the problem that she has with it is that there's no consistency. So like on the same insert that tells you like when you should get it, you shouldn't get it. It says if you're 6 months or older, you should get it. But at the very bottom, it says if you're 2 years or younger, you shouldn't get it. She said that it doesn't make sense.
There are probably some inconsistencies for certain vaccines. And I bet that this inconsistency can be really solved if the sheet would be read more carefully, because CDC is really accurate and specific about vaccination calendar. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, just do a vaccine. For instance, have you ever asked yourself why babies get vaccinated against hepatitis B? What is the transmission route for hepatitis B? Mostly, huh? So if that's vertical, it's too late, right? What else? Hep B, mostly drugs, huh? Well, okay. Sexual with hepatitis, sexual is kind of tricky. Blood.
During labor, the baby.
Well, if mother is hepatitis B positive, the baby will probably get the infection in utero. Okay, but what else? What is the chance that the baby is going to be doing drugs? Like third day of his or her life? Little, right? Depends on the parent, yes. Depends on the parent, but little. Now, why? Vaccine is at 1 day of age.
Start them off while they're young.
Get it out of the way. It's extremely safe. It's the safest vaccine that we have. So it's easier to get vaccinated at the age of 1, so person is protected for life, than try and hold a person back in the clinic when he or she is 25 years old. Does that make sense? A lot of it deals not... So these calendars were for a long, long time, okay? People were figuring out what's the best time. Now this is called Jenny McCarthy body count. Have you heard about... Jenny McCarthy has an autistic son, and she claimed... You know who Jenny McCarthy is? Well, you can call her the actress of movies. Okay. Jim Carrey's wife. Okay. So she has an autistic son, and she claimed that vaccination, MMR vaccination, caused the autism. And as a celebrity, she was peddling the idea of vaccine-associated autism quite intensively. She was the host on some TV show, which caused a huge backlash from a lot of viewers. She was fired from that show later. But based on epidemiological studies, you can see how many vaccine-preventable deaths, how many vaccine-preventable infections happened since the time she started to promote anti-vaccine ideas. So they created a site, which they call Jenny McCarthy body count. Of course, it's not direct, but she definitely contributed to those vaccine-preventable deaths. And that's the number of vaccine-preventable deaths in the period of 8 years, 9,000 people. Okay, so every year it was more than 1,000 kids or adults who died from the diseases that could have been easily prevented by vaccination. 150,000 people got sick. Okay. Later it was found that her son had a genetic predisposition to autism. It was like a year ago something. So there's a lot of argument. I'm really happy that I don't have to convince anybody the necessity of vaccines, but with patients it's going to be an uphill battle. I was able to convince one person in my life that she has to get her children vaccinated. It took me an hour and a half on the phone and Facebook Messenger, and the last question that I received from her, because she was communicating with another friend of hers, and that friend of hers was really anti-vax. The last question that I received before she was convinced: do I work for pharma? Do I work for pharmaceutical company? And I told her I wish. But I don't get any money from them. It's just common sense.
There's been a big link, well at least I think so, lots of studies have shown this, that there's a really big link between autism and a pregnant woman being exposed to like really bad environmental factors.
Probably.
So I just think it's funny that people are so caught up in this when there's evidence that
There was one excellent shot photograph that I saw once. The pregnant woman stands on the porch of her house smoking. and the legend of the photograph says such and such, and there's a construction site next to it, such and such is really concerned about the damage that the noise from the construction site can cause to her baby. And she's standing there and smoking. It was absolutely hilarious. And a lot of perception of medical factors that contribute to diseases is at this level. So you have to educate people. That's going to be your main job as nurses, in any other specialty, to educate people. Okay? And unfortunately, you can't call them idiots. That's the problem. Yeah, not to the face. Okay, but please bring this out. Tell them. Okay, and with the current administration, it's getting harder and harder, right? Let's stop at this. It's just easier to bring